Avery. Reporter 1. Reporter 2. The other one's for Tony?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll
get it to him.
Okay. Well, right after we were going to discuss things like that. One of my new cards.
Thank you.
Hello, this is a mic check, 1, 2.
Okay. I'm good.
Hello, this is a mic check. How many mic checks could a mic check check? If a mic check could check mics, good.
Load up these seats behind you. Load them up.
How many mics could a mic check check?
House, you built it. Sit here.
All right, one final mic check. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, we are good. You guys excited to be here? No? You're killing me. All right.
We still got 2 seats up front for anyone who would, behind me, for anyone who would like to grab those. One seat behind me. Going once. Susan. About another minute, and we're going to close the doors and get started. All right, everyone. If I could have your attention, please. Oh, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is C.J. Smith, and I have the pleasure of acting as your MC for this morning. This is my 3rd year back at the Capitol. They just keep asking me to come back, so I just keep coming back. How many of you, this is your first time here for Senior Day at the Capitol? All right. Very nice, very nice, very nice. Well, we have an exciting day planned for you, and we hope that you will learn something that you can take back to your groups or your organizations or even to yourself that has to do with the quality of life for seniors here in Colorado. So I am more than excited to be here with you on today. Just for a couple of housekeeping notes, restrooms are located on the 3rd floor and on the 6th floor. We have handicap restrooms in the basement, so if you are in need of that, please flag down on one of the volunteers and we'll make sure that that is taken care of for you. Now, the bags that you have, one of the things we're doing today, we're recording, so we're trying to minimize as much of the noise as we can. We know that there's a lot of exciting information, but we're asking you to just trust us about what some of that information is as far as the agenda. So if you would, just take 15 seconds, starting now. Look in your bag. Everybody, just look, just look, just look. Make all the noise you can. Look in your bag. Tell your neighbor to look in your bag. Because once we look in the bags, we're going to ask you to please, ma'am, please, sir, to just follow with the agenda that we have so we can minimize the noise because we're being recorded. So with that being said, how's everybody doing? All right, for a Wednesday morning, we'll take it. Once again, we have an exciting day planned for you, and we're going to get started with our Pledge of Allegiance. I have 2 young ladies. Let me just tell you quickly something about them. Paige, who is the granddaughter of Ed, who's the president of Colorado Senior Lobby. She's in the 8th grade at Highline Academy. She'll be attending South High School next year, and tomorrow she's on her way to Spain. So we're excited for Paige with that. Soccer and basketball are her sports, and this is her 4th year, I think we said, attending Colorado Senior Lobby. And we also have Alex. Alex is in the 3rd grade at Bromley Charter School. And in July, she'll be participating in a Taekwondo competition. So everybody be on the lookout for Alex. Be on the lookout for Alex. So with that being said, if I can get them to come forward, we'll proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance. Stand if you're able. Thank you so much. You may be seated. All right. Court is in session.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Senior Day at the Capitol. Nearly 40 years of the Colorado Senior Lobby, and what a great group of volunteers we have. Just this whole event, everything that you see here, hope you're going to be able to attend with us at lunch. It's just remarkable the number of people who come up to help on this event. I'd like to recognize all the volunteers. We got the Colorado Commission on Aging Commission, my fellow commissioners here as ushers, Seniors Resource Center, busted through with all kinds of volunteers. And before we raise our hands to all of these wonderful people, I also want to make special mention to Met TV, Metropolitan State University, and this great group of student journalists who are just invigorating this entire space. It's a midterm year. We have a governor who's going out. As a matter of fact, because of the primary voting last year, we've got 1/3 of our voters in the state who are not going to be able to vote in the primaries for the governor, for the Democratic or Republican side. That's going to be new. And always doing midterms, it seems that we get more people because everyone's going to go, well, what happened? Why did it be this way? We want it to be different. And so when the midterms come up, we've got a lot to talk about. And boy, we got a lineup for you here. We got the governor, lieutenant governor, Mayor Michael B. Hancock is coming over. We can talk about what Denver is doing on that regional level. And on streaming, we're streaming to Fort Collins. We're streaming in Pueblo. We're on YouTube. We're everywhere. Really. It's really something. I'd like to be able to introduce you now to the president of Colorado Senior Lobby, Ed Shackelford. He's been president now for what, 5 years? 5 years. And we all talk about aging. And aging is not an old person thing. Aging is a human thing. We all are aging. We all know it. As soon as we start to recognize that, the sooner we're going to start taking care of everybody. We've been seeing this come through politically. These past few years, we've been seeing it happen for decades around here. We are all human beings. We need to get along, and we need to be respectful, and we need to stop all of this bullying and harassment, and we need to get engaged and work with each other. And that's really what this whole senior thing is about. It's about humanity. It's not about old people. But where does all the money come from? And that money, when we start looking up towards the next 18 years or so, we start taking a look to 2030, there's going to be a lot of decisions that need to be made. And so for those of you who say, well, I mean, here I am, 64, well, we're all in the mix, everything's going just fine. But you know what? We're going to get older. And that's the reason why I have this guy, because he's older. Ed Shackelford, everybody.
Interfacing with legislators and so forth. And, you know, it's an incredible dedication for these people. And so if are they here? I know Jeanette's a leader over there in the blue, but I know Diane, who's our most diligent of all, is, I think, testifying this morning. There's an important bill up that she is probably down doing that. But is she here? Oh, there she is. She's a hard-working lady. We actually have a lot of talent on the board and equally important dedication and commitment. And I was just kind of summarize it. We've got both young and older, let me make that clear, Republicans and Democrats, disabled, black and white, veteran, male and female, rural and city backgrounds, financially secure and people living on the edge, and a lawyer and a former CPA. So that's quite a bit of talent that we bring to our board. I wanted to quote, this is Bertrand Russell. How many of you know who Bertrand Russell was? He was a really well-known philosopher certainly in the 1940s and earlier, maybe even a little later. What is irrational divides us. What is rational unites us. And I think that really says a lot. Personally, I'm 80 years old, and thanks to 2 new knees, and how many of you have at least one joint? I spend a lot of time at the senior lobby. I'm chairman of my self-managed HOA, which each of these could be a full-time job, and I'm also still an active realtor. And the point is, I'm 80 years old, and any one of you can do that. You just need to get out and become involved. Then here's what, excuse me, here's what Oprah Winfrey had to say. The greatest discovery of all times is that a person can change his future by merely changing his attitude. And I think that is particularly germane to seniors. It's easy to get down. Just reading this month's Reader's Digest today, and there was this little article, a little tiny article on, it's a lady from India who's the president of PepsiCo. And she went to see her mother in India, and the mother made her get dressed up, and she couldn't let her sleep in because all the cousins, she said fourth and fifth cousins, all came to visit. They all came and said hello to her. Then they went and congratulated the mother for raising such an outstanding young lady. I just thought that was an interesting and really truthful thing. There's a lot that will happen between now and 2025 with many positive improvements. And the things we've we have zeroed in is financial and physical protection of seniors, which is elder abuse. There's a lot of that, and a lot of it is financial, and a lot of money disappears. The second one is seniors in the workplace. We want them out working. We want them hired, and now's a good time to get hired. We want them to do mentoring and retraining. So there's just a lot you can do. Healthcare access, quality, and cost, and that's a constant battle down here. You know, that a lot of it is federal, but there are things that can be done at the state level too. And we're very marginally successful at this time in getting those things done. Dementia concerns, you know, you probably all think about dementia, and you'll see example, one of our big successes this year is in the area of dementia, and they'll be talking about that in a few minutes. Affordable and safe housing for seniors, and if you watch the papers, you can see how difficult these housing is in Colorado. And they tend to take these older apartment buildings, make everyone leave, and then upgrade it, and then you couldn't afford to move back in. So serious problems. Independent living services. There's a lot of programs to help you stay in the home, and we need to work always focused on keeping those programs in place. And safe and affordable and reliable transportation. I know that gets to be a big issue with seniors. So anyway, those are things that are focused on it. And this is why your participation in the legislative process is vital. The senior profile down here is really low, and I will challenge you. If you ever listen to a stump speech, I can almost guarantee you they won't mention seniors. So you need to, anytime you hear a stump speech, you need to challenge them. I've just looked at the Denver platform for the Democratic Party, and it was no mention of seniors. And we'll talk about why that's the big issue coming up. The senior profile is relatively low, and we're all not as aggressive as we need to be. So it's really imperative for you all to get out. You know, if you came down here, you can also go see your legislators. You know, we meet every Monday morning when the legislative session. You can come to those meetings and participate, or you can even dial in. You can find the information on our webpage. Attend the caucuses. You know, everyone here should have attended the caucuses. Volunteer at your local party, and always ask about their plans for seniors. You can also come down to the Capitol and join us. We are always sitting there testifying, and it's interesting. We sat in the basement at the cafeteria, and even just sitting there, interface with a lot of legislators as they walk by and talk to us. You know, that alone is an effective tool. You know, you can always join us to do that. You know, there's a lot of positive things happening down here, and we have a lot of successes. But the demographics are not favorable to seniors. At the state level, the big expenses start occurring as you approach 80. There's no magical date to that. And what happens when you get to that age is when you start needing in-home care services and assisted living and nursing homes. Those are the big expenses that happen down here. Now, the over 80 in 15 years doubles. And you can imagine the impact on the state budget from that. Now, there's no scenario we can draw that says the revenue will also double at that time. You know, the revenue will only increase at the rate of population as a whole, so that we're going to be taking care of basically twice the number of people for the same amount of money. And this starts around 2025. It's a huge issue and it gets no attention. And what we focus on and what the legislature focuses on, and we always have in mind, is spending $100 now to save $1,000 down the road, which is keeping people healthier and in their homes, but able to maintain themselves without needing a lot of services. That's it, but you cannot overemphasize what's coming. You know, it's just going to be huge. And one of the things, and I know that this is not going to be, no one's going to leave happy when I say this, but the Homestead Act, the property tax exemption, how many of you benefit from that? It's not sustainable. It's $150 million now, and in 15 years it goes to $300 million. And it has some quirks in it, but it's in the Constitution, and there's very limited things we can do on that. But we're working on ways to do that, and it's going to be probably, and this is nothing cast in bronze, but they're looking at replacing it with tax credits, which wouldn't require you to be paying taxes. You know, it would just be a tax. You could file for the credit whether you were paying any tax or not. And it will be means tested. And I would expect it'll also permit people to downsize. You know, as you know now, if you sell your house and go to a smaller one, you lose, for 10 years you lose the credit. So at any rate, you may not, I know that's a big issue and it's a sensitive issue, but sometimes when things are simply not sustainable, it's time to make those kinds of decisions. You know, you have to make decisions. The legislation is a lengthy process, and you know, I get calls and people want legislation, but I'm going to tell you how, if you want legislation, here's how you got to go about it. The legislation is created in the summer and fall. It's not created basically when the legislature's in session. It's all done and mostly done in the summer and fall. If you want legislation that you have an idea on, you've got to talk to your legislator in the summer and see if he can find someone that's interested in the issue that's important to you. That's when it happens, and that's what we do. We meet every other week in the summer, our legislative committee, and we work with legislators certainly on a limited number of items, but our resources are limited. At any rate, that's how you get legislation. So if you have issues, call your legislators, and as soon as the legislature's over, which is May, 9th or 10th, somewhere in that range. I can't stop without saying, I think you should all be incredibly concerned at the federal level. The size of the deficits that are incurring when we're at full employment, we should be running We should be running positive to pay down the debt. The size of the deficits that are incurring is greatly exposing Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And you cannot ignore what's happening. You should all let your Congresspeople, senators, and representatives know your concerns on that. I think it's a huge concern, just like the property tax. It's what they're doing is not sustainable. It's just not sustainable, and the big dollars are defense and Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So you know where the money's going to come from. So at any rate, I think you need to be really active on that. So just a kind of a last item here. Anyone that wants to help me collect signatures, I'm going to be in the lobby of the county convention collecting signatures to get something about seniors on the in the Denver platform. So I need I have to collect 150 or so signatures. So that's what it takes. You know, you just got to get out there and try and make things happen. So with that completes my remarks for the day, but I will see you around and we'll be at the lunch. The lunch is going to be really, really important. I think you'll be really happy with that. So thank you.
Ed works very hard. Thank you so much, Ed. We have an overflow room for those of you somewhere. It's right above us on the 3rd floor. There's an overflow room. All of this is being shot by Met TV, and it's running on YouTube, just FYI. That's part of what we're doing nowadays. We're making sure that we're taking care of all of that. I wanted to see who has the proclamation. I've been passing this thing around. Anyone have it? Proclamation? Did we lose it? It's really cool if it ever shows up again. Yeah, it's in your program, but I mean, the original. I passed the original around from the governor's office. Okay, somebody liked it a lot. It's all right. It's all right. I wanted to take a moment and recognize the board of directors for Colorado Senior Lobby. Please, would you stand? Stand, board. Thank you. Ed had talked about the legislative process, and I know for some of you, you're here trying to figure out, well, gosh, where do we begin? What's a great way to go? How do I start? And really, go to our website, Corinne Hall. As a matter of fact, talking about volunteers, stand up, Corinne Hall. She is the queen, Colorado Senior Lobby. She does everything. She does the website. She does the newsletter. She takes care of everybody. She buys Ed food. She is amazing. Go to the website. She does a great job on the website. Colorado Senior Lobby, one word, coloradoseniorlobby.org. You'll find out how to get to the legislative meetings and help become a part of that whole process that we have on Mondays. We meet weekly during the sessions, and as Ed said, bi-weekly. At other times of the year, you can get a feel for how everything is going. You can also just go and play around and take a look a little bit. And if you have issues or something that you want to talk about, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where the planning happens. I want to take a moment now to introduce you to a special guest that we've been waiting a long time to meet. The new Senior Advisor on Aging for the state of Colorado is something that, regardless of the organization that you may relate to in the senior world, whether it's the Commission on Aging or SAPCA or Senior Lobby, it just doesn't matter. We all have been wanting to have someone help us pull everything together, help us prioritize our actions, help us increase our influence, and get a fair deal for seniors. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Wade Buchanan.
I was writing fast as Steve was describing my job. I wanted to make sure I got it all. Thank you, Steve, and thanks, Ed, and thanks to the Senior Lobby for this day. Thank you all for being here. There's a lot of good work that goes on in this building. There's a lot of good people here. But it's never quite, the outcome is never quite as good as when citizens show up and citizens let us all know what really needs to be happening. So thank you for being here. I want to do a little exercise, if I might. I am told there's about 200 people in this room. I'm not sure if we should let the fire marshal know that. By the way, I've been in this job for a little over 2 months, and I think this is the first time I've worn a tie. So that's for you folks. So I hope you appreciate that. Anyway, so I'm told there's 200 folks or so in this room. Let's just say there's 200. I want to talk to you a little about what it is we're facing in the state as we move forward into the future. If the first two, assume there's 200 people in this room, there's about 22 people in the first 2 rows here. If you could maybe stand up or hold your arms up, maybe just hold your hands up, so and maybe just 1 or 2. Hold them, keep them up, and 1 or 2 in the next row. So if it were 1950, and we were looking at the distribution, not the number of people, but the distribution of people in our state over 60, and we had 200 people, and it was a representative group, this is how many would be over 60. By the year 2050, just 100 years later, I mean, I know that's a long time, but in terms of generations and demographics and all, that's a blink of an eye. If all 5, for the first 5 rows, so all but the last row would raise your hand. This is the number of people who will be over 60 by 2050. We have never been as old as we are today in human history. And we will never again be as young as we are today in the future. So that's what's going on. It's not some wave that's coming over us because one pushy generation that I happen to belong to is aging. We're all living longer. That's a good thing. Longevity increased 66% in the 20th century. In all of human history, to 1900 got us to 47 years of life expectancy. One century got us to almost 78, 79 years. 66% increase. This is good news. We're all living longer. The challenge is we have to figure out how to live better. And we have to figure out how to take the systems that are designed when the age distribution was represented by these first 2 rows and work with those systems so they can serve essentially this entire middle section. And by the way, back in 1950, 1.5% of us, like 3 of you people, were over 80. And by 2050, it'll be 7% of us. So it's a significant challenge. I think it's a great challenge. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for all of us. And I know Ed gave me Steve gave me 5 minutes, and I've used up 4 of them, so I'll try to.
Don't worry about it. Maybe even have some people ask you some questions.
Oh, okay,
Put
great.
you on the spot, make you earn your pay.
Yeah. So let me just tell you, the topic of my talk is my new job and you. The one important thing you need to know about my new job is that it exists. We have never before had, that's my mother is excited about that, actually. She said, oh, you got a job, that's great. We've never before had at a senior level a senior advisor on aging. And it's not about me, it's about the position. It's the opportunity to finally take a lot of the different silos, and there's a lot of great people around this room who work in state government. There's Todd Coffey back there just making eye contact with him, with the Department of Human Services, who does great work with the area agencies on aging. They may tell you differently, but I think he does great work. But we do these in silos. We do these things in silos. And one of the tasks that I hope to take on is how to figure out how we do a better job collaborating and working together across state government and between state government and local government. So let me just, you're going to hear an awful lot about, and you heard a lot from Ed about some of the challenges we face now, and a little later we're going to hear about some of what's going on in this building legislatively right now. I want to take just 2 or 3 minutes to talk about that year 2050 or that year 2030 that we're headed towards. Because if our challenge is to live better and not just longer, then my sense is, I learned this from a very good friend who was a funder of an organization I used to work for. You have to go upstream. If you want to avoid the bad stuff, you have to invest in the good stuff. And you invest in the good stuff. We learned this from a lot of the work people have done on early childhood and adolescent work. You invest upstream. When people get their first job, they need to start saving for retirement. A large number of Coloradans don't have access to workplace retirement savings. If you're going to have many of us are going to face and do face, I certainly face, family members who are facing challenges as they age. Caregiving, huge, huge part of our future. Unpaid caregiving, family members. Are we supporting them? What are we doing for them? Are we helping them understand what's ahead and what resources are available? Workplaces, hiring practices, as we hear an awful lot about, my goodness, the workforce is shrinking. Well, they're assuming everyone's going to retire at 65. What about a future where people have a choice to continue to work if they want to or if they need to? And do we have the right facilities, the right policies in place, the right strategies in workplaces to accommodate that? And probably most importantly, what are we doing in communities? We say the holy grail in this issue is what people call aging in place. I prefer to think of it as aging in community, because I watch my mother as an example, and what she is engaged in is a series of small, incremental, intentional transitional decisions. That was a big sentence. I should practice an easier sentence than that. But small transitions. She and Dad sold the big house, moved to the medium-sized house on one floor. Dad passed away. Mom sold the medium-sized house. She's now living in one of these 55 and older apartment complexes. That's where she should be right now. That's perfect for her. She is, and she selected it for that reason. Do we have those housing options available? Ed mentioned the Homestead Act telling you that you get this wonderful benefit as long as you stay put in the house that you're in and that you've been in for 10 years or more. That may be the exact wrong place for people to be. Can we change those incentives? So all sorts of challenges ahead of us, and I think it's an exciting area to be working. I'm looking over at Linda Meyer over here, who's the head of the Area Agency on Aging in Larimer County. Linda, wave. I spent part of my morning yesterday talking to her and learning about what they're doing up in Larimer County. The answers to so much of what we're talking about is happening at the local level. How we're planning housing, how we're planning transportation options, how we're planning, goodness, things as easy as simple as curb cuts, and how long it takes for lights to change so people are able to get across the street. These are the sorts of things that when we say we need to keep people in community longer so that they stay out of the long-term place, these are the sorts of things, the small things that make the big difference. So I am very excited about all of this and the work we're going to do together. This job, I'll say this and then close with this, it is funded by a very wonderful new organization called Next 50 Initiative. Is Margaret in the room? Is someone from Next 50 in the room? Darn, I wanted to thank them. They ran out of money. No, they did not run out of money. I think they have a grant cycle and a decision to make. But they have funded this position for 3 years. And I am so grateful for that because and who knows what happens after 3 years. Maybe we have a department on aging. Maybe we have, you know, something that is solidified and long-term for the state. But those 3 years are our challenge, to figure out how we raise up these issues, how we create momentum moving forward on these issues, and how we probably hopefully change the system permanently for the better, so that we are starting to think about systems and strategies and have those that are not designed for the first 2 rows that represented 1950, but that we have a system that works for everybody and works for that community that we're heading towards in 2030 and 2050. So I am thrilled to be in this position. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm not too thrilled about wearing a tie, but you know, what the heck. And you want me to take?
I would like you to stick around. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Wade a hand. Thank you, Wade. Tony, let's have Metro State reporters in the 2 aisles, please. You've got mics. Who has questions for Wade? Come on. Let's go.
Come on. Make it good. Oh, down here. Make it something I can answer.
I read years ago that 97% of all the people that have ever lived are alive today.
97%? Did everyone hear that? So the gentleman said that he read that 97% of all the people who have ever lived are alive today. What's the, that's...
Well, probably more than that now. Probably more.
Yeah, could be. Could be. Yeah. Down here, sir.
Is it true with the homestead exemption that there's discussion about extending that to a one-time move so you can move and carry that homestead exemption with you?
So did everyone hear the question? So the question is asking about the homestead exemption and discussions about potential changes to it, and is it true that there's a discussion of extending that to allow people to move one time and take it with you, basically? Is that correct, Nicole? So I think there's a discussion about every possible idea you can think of, and I think folks need to be involved in it. Yes, I haven't heard that specific one move piece. I've heard conversation about how you make it portable so that you can move when you need to, when it's appropriate to move. Ed said, and it's true, so I'll just add that the largest expenditure we make as a state is on aging issues is Medicaid. The second largest investment we make is in the homestead exemption, is through the homestead exemption. That's $150 million a year now. It's going to $300 million within 12 years. The question I ask is, if we're going to spend $150 million on housing for older Coloradans, is this the right way to do it? And I think if we look at it that way, because we can look at it as I said, my goodness, this is not sustainable, it's going to fall apart. I think those are accurate statements. It probably isn't sustainable at the current level. But the question for me, the more exciting question is, okay, what should we be doing then? Because housing is a real issue. Affordability of housing, but also accessibility of housing. You have a lot of people who bought these houses many, many years ago when they were worth a lot less. They're now on fixed incomes and they're worth a lot more on that property, even though property taxes, quite honestly, this is true, in Colorado are lower than in most states. They're still higher for you than they used to be, and they're a challenge for people, especially if you've retired and you're on a fixed income. So that's a huge nut to crack, but it's one of the largest expenditures we make on aging issues, and my question is there a more effective way to use that money to accomplish the same thing and more? And I think if we're thinking about it that way, I think we can get to a good answer.
Okay, Kip Bishop, Colorado Senior Lobby, you have all of you kind of saw the desk that we had up there, what's on your mind. You wrote some questions. We kind of got some little interactivity from you. Kip, what do you got?
Ned from Arvada asks, is there a plan to engage government and the private sector to address senior needs?
Yeah, we have to. We absolutely have to. I'm one person, and even if I have all the good, the question, is there a plan to engage the communities and the business community in issues around seniors? I think that absolutely has to happen. And I think if we don't do that, then we're going to come up with imperfect answers, maybe the wrong answers. So certainly the way I think about doing this, and I was up in Larimer County yesterday meeting with not only people from the county government, but with folks at the university and folks from the community who've put together this partnership for age-friendly communities in Larimer County. I'm sorry. I can hear myself, but you can't. Should I start over? Did I tell you about the tie? Yeah.
Hey, Wade, when you're in this job, you're not really allowed senior moments.
Yes. Okay. So the question was involving community and business, private sector folks in these issues, and the answer was yes, we have to do that, and if we don't, shame on us.
All right. Do you have one more?
This is about education. I'm not sure this fact is correct, but I'm sure a lot of us with the children and grandchildren in the Colorado public school system, the fact that if it's accurate, is that we spend as a state, we're the 48th, number one being whatever, and we're the 48th in terms of the amount spent on either per child in education or however they figure it. And that really, if it's true, like your comments and why you think that's the situation.
So the question was about school funding, and is it true that we're 48th or 49th in the nation in terms of, and why is that the case? And so the answer is yes. I mean, it depends on how you measure it, but we're down there near the bottom. I work for the governor, but I'm not speaking for the governor in this answer. So I'll just tell you that I think that a large part of the answer is our fiscal policy writ large in the state. We have one of the smallest state governments in the country. And so we make a smaller investment than other states in K through 12. We make a smaller investment than other states in higher education. We make a smaller investment than other states in transportation and in a number of areas. So and the problem, the challenge, the reason I think I certainly think it's an appropriate question, is that we can't think of the answers to these questions individually or pitting one off against the other. This can't be, we need more money for older Coloradans and therefore younger Coloradans should get less attention. That cannot be the answer. The answer has to be, let's all, because this isn't about a state where one age group lives large and everyone else doesn't. This is about a state that works for everybody. And so certainly as I think about my job, it's very much integrated with questions like that. And how are we making sure that the whole machine works well? And we have a lot of work on the fiscal front. We have a lot of work on the educational front. But thanks for that question.
Thank you, Wade.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into some legislative dialogue. Please welcome Kelly Fritz from ARP and Rich Morrow from Denver Regional Council of Governments. Dr. Cog.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. You sound pretty much awake so far. Kelly, what's your official title?
Associate State Director, Advocacy Representative.
At AARP Colorado, and I'm the policy and legislative person for the Denver Regional Council on Governments. And needless to say, we spend a lot of our time down here advocating for all of you and the older Coloradans in the state. And so what we're going to do is give a little bit of overview of some of the issues we've been working on. We are hoping and expecting that legislators, they've been invited to come and talk to you this morning, and we are hoping that they will be wrapping up their work on the House and Senate floors, and before they go on to the rest of their business, we'll stop by here and say a few words to you. So, but in the meantime, we're going to talk, and if anyone, when we see legislators come in, we're going to stop and give them the priority to come in. And that's also notice to any of the speakers following, except of course the governor and the mayor and the lieutenant governor. But other than that, we will interrupt whatever's going on to invite legislators who come by to come up here. So I made a couple of notes, and let me just give you a couple of thoughts. And if we have the time, certainly we can answer questions on any of these issues. But I wanted to just give you a little bit of a preview of some of the major issues that Senior Lobby has been working on down here at the Capitol since January. And of course it was mentioned earlier that we have what we're calling our Capitol Gang that comes down here 2 and 3 times a week to lobby legislators to testify on bills in committee, and really appreciate the work that they're doing. And some of them have had some late nights already. They've stayed till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night in order to testify on bills. So they deserve a big hand real quick if we could do that. So the first thing I'll mention is the state budget. And that's where all the funding for all of the state agencies and programs and services gets included. And it's a key area for aging services, particularly an area that we call state funding for senior services, that we worked real hard with the area agencies on aging. And if you don't know about what they are, I think several of you in the room do, and we have some of the AAA directors here today, and I think I saw Bob Held and Joe.
Bob, you're in the back.
Bob in the back, and is Joe around here? Joe's over here, and Jayla's over there. There may be others that I'm not seeing. But joint budget, one of the things that we're proud of is the Joint Budget Committee did approve an increase. Are you one? See? You're supposed to stand up. And this is Linda from Fort Collins area. The Joint Budget Committee did approve an increase in funding of $4 million statewide for this year to expand services, or maybe at least start to cut into waiting lists for services. So we're proud of that, and we're looking forward to that going forward. And there's some other smaller issues, but in the interest of time, I wanted to focus mainly on that one. So the other issues that Senior Lobby in particular have been working on, and when I'm done, I'll ask Kelly to talk, and if we still have time, I might have Jeanette come and say a few words. But drug pricing transparency has been a big issue down at the Capitol this year. I think I counted at least a half a dozen bills going through the legislature that would attempt to shine more light on how the prices for prescription drugs that we all pay, or that our insurance companies pay and we share in the payment, how those get determined. I don't know if they're going to pass. They're still in the process, but when you see as many as half a dozen bills on one topic, you know that it's rising to a level of interest. And I see a number of heads shaking, so I sense that just about everybody, I imagine, has had experiences with getting shocked by the price of a prescription that they're having to pay. So there are some legislators who are trying to at least shine a light on how those prices are determined. Another issue that's been subject of a lot of conversation down here this year has been affordable housing, and related to that, renters protection. Again, that's one of those issues that just has gotten major amounts of attention in the last few years with Colorado's economy booming in some ways. It's driven up housing prices both in terms of for sale and rental properties. And so again, we've seen more than a dozen or more than half a dozen different bills on issues to try to get more funding for housing assistance, building more affordable housing, and also in the rental area, more protections for renters in terms of help paying their rents and those sorts of things, and dealing with evictions, and all with the goal of helping to keep people living in the community as much as possible. So that's another issue. A couple more that I'll just mention real quick. Does everybody here know what a freestanding emergency room is? Have you heard that? Have you heard of urgent care? Do you know that they're not the same thing? Right? Okay, so there's a couple bills going through the legislature to address those issues as well, some licensing of them and so forth. So Senior Lobby's been working on those. And finally, I'll mention an issue of mandatory arbitration clauses in contracts. How about that one? That might be, I see some heads shaking. I thought that'd be a little more esoteric for some folks. But these are contracts that are included in actually probably just about any contract you might sign with an organization or a financial institution or a company, where there's a clause that basically says if there's ever a dispute between you and the company, that you agree to have that dispute handled through binding arbitration. So you're basically giving up your right to go to court over the dispute, or to join a class action lawsuit over that dispute. The process on the mandatory arbitration a lot of times is really in the favor of the employer, or the company. They pick the arbitrator, the location of the hearing, and other terms of that. And there's a couple of bills going through the legislature that would try to level the playing field for the consumers on that. And part of the reason why Senior Lobby is involved in that, in supporting those bills, is because those types of contracts are common in assisted living and nursing homes. And so if any of you are going to be looking into that, or already have, if you check the contracts, you be sure you will find that somewhere in the contract. So, so that's one of the other issues. With that, I'm going to stop and let Kelly talk about a couple of the other issues that AARP in particular is taking the lead on. Thank you.
I have nothing to say. Nothing's going on here. See ya. No, I'm just kidding. There is so much happening this year, and I wish I could tell everybody that it's terrific. Everything is great. It doesn't work like that. Some bills are really great, and some are not so great. So I'll tell you about a few that we're actively working on as AARP. We just had our key bill for the year drop. It's called the Colorado Secure Savings Plan. We want to give everybody the means to retire someday and create a fund so that they can do that. And that is House Bill 1298, that is sponsored by Representatives Pedersen and Bridges, and in the Senate, Donovan and Todd. So we definitely want to solicit support for that. Again, give everybody the ability to save for retirement. How cool would that be, right? So that's a big one for us at AARP. Now that's a really good bill that we're totally excited about. let's talk about something that we're not so excited about. Anybody here hear of something called PARA? Yes. There's a bill, Senate Bill 200 on PARA. And there are good things about this bill, and there are some really not good things about this bill. We are heavily engaged in trying to fix some of the not so good things about this bill. Anybody on PARA, just out of curiosity? PARA, Public Employees Retirement Association. So it employs public employees in the state of Colorado, most known teachers, you know, people who work in public education. A big thing to know about PARA is if somebody's on PARA, they are not on Social Security. They cannot get Social Security. And that's an issue. And so for that reason, it's imperative that PARA be solvent for the future, right? Absolutely. So we want that. We want it to be solvent. And there are things in Senate Bill 200 that do work on that, that were supported by the PARA board. But there's some outright junk in it too. Specifically, there's a provision to have new hires come in under defined contribution plans instead of defined benefit. And some people go, what are you talking about? What does that mean? It's basically a way to undermine PARA. You may remember the whole federal debate when they were looking at privatizing Social Security. It's the same thing, but to PARA. And that's just not okay. We really want to get that provision out of that bill. It also does things with the cost of living, lowers that. You know, again, it was a promise made to people who work for our state to make it a better state. It should be in good, solvent condition. So we're actively working on that bill as AARP. There's been some other stuff. You know what happens as we get to the end of session and everybody's getting ready for election year stuff? You see a lot of really weird, wacky bills. And I'll just give you an example of one that just dropped last week and went to committee yesterday. And that was, it has to do with RTD fares. Anybody use RTD out of curiosity? Anybody take advantage of a senior discount with RTD? Yeah. So this was a bill, there was a bill that dropped late last week. It is Senate Bill 204 by Senator Neville. And what it does is it says that if RTD, you know, creates new discount programs for seniors or young people or whatever, that it has to be reviewed by the state. Can you imagine that? I mean, I don't even, it's beyond believable to us. So needless to say, we came down and we testified against it. It did pass the Senate Finance Committee. It's moving. And I don't think it'll pass the House, but regardless, what a dumb idea. We can't believe we're even seeing this stuff. Anyway, another bill that just dropped the other night, it dropped in the middle of the night, and that always tells you something when they drop in the middle of the night like that. And it's a new bill, it's Senate Bill 214, and it goes up for hearing next Thursday. Thursday at 1:30, at least that's when it's scheduled. And what it would do is say that Medicaid, anybody know anything about Medicaid? Why it's important to older adults? It's a big provider of long-term care for older adults. Well, Senate Bill 214 would create a work requirement for Medicaid. What?
Did you think you were going to get a laugh out of that?
I can't believe we're even seeing this, but we are. And so I want to encourage everybody, if you can join us again next Thursday, again, 1:30, I think it's in the Senate Health Committee. We would love to see you. There may even be a rally before the event to stand up and say, no, thank you. I don't expect it to pass, but again, the fact we even see this stuff, we want to shut it down and make it crystal clear. Colorado doesn't need this kind of stuff in this state. So again, that's Senate Bill 214, and it's up next Thursday. At least that's when it's on the calendar for right now. Not okay with us. Again, there's a lot of other stuff too that we're tracking, some of it good, some of it not so good, but those are a few highlights of things that we are working on as AARP. Well, I'll just say another one, 911. When you dial 911, what do you want to get, just out of curiosity? You want to be connected to the services, right? Well, there's another bill to deregulate 911 again this year, and we're fighting that too. So that always remains a big one for us as well. So anyway, fun stuff at your Capitol, everybody.
Thanks, Kelly. We're just going to go for the judge real quick. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our board chair, Bob Epstein, who will introduce a very special guest.
Good morning. As you said, I'm Bob Epstein. I chair the Colorado Senior Lobby. I'm here to introduce Governor John Hickenlooper, who is a former geologist, entrepreneur, beer meister, and mayor of Denver, and recently author to his memoir and to his resume with the publication of his memoirs, The Opposite of Woe, My Life in Beer and Politics. There's none out there, so don't rush. Since taking office in 2011, the governor and his team have endeavored to make Colorado the most pro-business state with the highest environmental and ethical standards. Having personally worked with various staff and team members to resolve various issues to include veterans, disabilities, and senior services, I can vouch for their integrity and commitment. Governor Hickenlooper, although term limited, has not forgotten the need for increasing funding for essential senior services. So he has included the $4 million, which you heard from Rich Morrow, has been approved in his budget. So there will be another $4 million, although we probably need 20, but it'll help. It'll help. We thank Governor Hickenlooper for his leadership during the good and bad times, and you know we've had our share of that, and also for his service. So please join me in welcoming the Governor of the state of Colorado, Governor John Hickenlooper.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate the kind introduction. I'll pull myself together here. Thank you all for coming. You know, it's one of my staff. You can't control your staff, and so they go off and they come up with these ideas. But they pointed out when I first became governor, a little over 7 years ago, 17% of the state was over 60. Next year, 21% will be over 60. And of course, the staff think they're clever because 7 years ago I was under 60. And now I'm 66. And that's good, right? I think we're seeing, and you all know this better than I can express, we're living longer, and we have increased mobility. You know, I'll still go out and play tennis or squash. Can't quite play soccer like I used to. And I did make the mistake of trying to play basketball with my son last weekend, which was not so good. But I think that with all those improvements in society, and I think, again, it is in many ways, it feels sometimes like the world is chaotic and out of control, and yet in many ways, this is the longest period of overall global safety we've had. Homicide rates have, with some changes, they've gone down. We are all living longer and healthier. But as we look at those changes, we recognize that there's whole different adjustments that we've got to evolve to make sure that we maintain quality of life through the rest of our years for everyone. That's why we created a strategic, we call it a Strategic Action Planning Group on Aging. We have a senior advisor on aging now. We received a grant from a large nonprofit, and I think Wade is over my, so it's Wade Buchanan, who is our, the senior advisor on aging, but really is kind of his task is to really help the state government think through each of the challenges, right? Are we going to keep working longer? I realize that's a sensitive subject. My wife looks at me and thinks that's a sensitive subject. You know, how do we make sure we're going to keep Social Security and Medicare, and yet so many financial projections show as we get older, it's hard to imagine how we're going to be able to pay for all that. So one thing I keep saying is, and we say this about healthcare all the time, you know, I've gone on made a number of appearances with a Republican governor of Ohio, John Kasich. He's a Republican, I'm a Democrat, we disagree on a lot of stuff, but we can agree on healthcare, that we don't want to roll back coverage. We're not willing to compromise on quality, but we agree that we've got to control costs. And everyone's got to be a part of that, right? Because you don't want to have to get to that point where you're saying, well, we're going to have to cut back coverage in certain areas for certain people. You know, this is the 21st century. I think if we, as a community, you know, take the responsibility that we can make the improvements, that we won't roll back coverage, we won't in any way diminish or compromise quality, but we'll find ways to save money so that as we live longer, we can make sure we get the health care that we need. And just like through most of our lives, those of us who are over 60, not everything has been perfect. You know, I've had a pretty lucky life, and yet I can look back and see a number of places where I did something stupid, or something happened to me that wasn't fair. You know, I got laid off when the oil and gas business collapsed in '86. I was out of work for almost 2 years. Our company got sold in 1986, and everyone got laid off. And you know, it was incredibly frustrating, and I was frustrated at government. Why didn't government do this? Why didn't they do that? Well, government's not perfect, right? We're always trying to make it better. At a certain point, sometimes people think there's a little too much government. I think I've been saying that myself from time to time. But I think on those big issues like Medicare and Social Security, we can deal with them. Obviously, Medicaid on a state level is important. Making sure we keep up with aging services. We're going to have to make sure we have enough, you know, facilities and enough support. You know, our goal has always been to make sure everyone gets to live in their home as long as they want, right? And we'll do everything we can to provide them the support and the services that works. My stepfather, who's now 91, he got to the point when he was 78 or 79, I guess, he didn't want to live in his own home anymore. He had to go up and down stairs. He hated it. So we looked and we found a place where he has a high quality of life. He still exercises. He has a tremendous amount of freedom. But if something goes wrong, he's got support there. And I think, again, those decisions, which we're all going to have to make going forward, are crucial. A big part of this is how do we make our communities age-friendly, right? So that, you know, that we have something called the Boomer Bond program that, again, helps make sure that we embrace people of all ages. In many cases, kids, now I know not all people in their golden years like myself enjoy being around small children. I get that. But in many cases, they make us feel younger, right? 5-year-olds and 10-year-olds, I mean, there's a benefit to make sure that we don't have all the young kids over there and all the golden agers over here. I like saying golden agers better than seniors. My wife thinks I'm being stupid, but anyway. You know, ARP has a age-friendly communities network that I think is a great model to look at, and how do we build that out? Within all these things, as our economy's done better, affordable housing is a key issue. Now, if you're lucky enough to own your own house, that's not such a bad thing, because then when you sell, you decide you want to go into an assisted living home in some fashion or other, you've got a nest egg that's oftentimes significant. But for those seniors who don't own their own house, right, it becomes a challenge, because the affordable housing, as it gets diminished, as cost of all kinds of housing goes up, it makes it harder for assisted living homes to function and be affordable to all people. We also need to make sure, and I can't tell you how many friends I have who are 67, 68 years old. They haven't saved for whatever reasons, not always their own fault, but they don't have everything set for the retirement that they want. And we have to begin really looking at how do we provide them support and find them jobs. If they want to, I have an old friend, a woman I've known for almost 50 years, 40 years for sure, and she's 67, 68, I guess, and she wants to work another 4 years. She cannot get interviews, right? And as a society, as a community, that should bother us, right? And these aren't jobs that she doesn't have to run around, or, I mean, she was very, very successful as an administrator for, human resources in large companies. She's not looking, she doesn't want to be, she used to run a whole human resource department, got paid $180,000 a year. She doesn't need all that. She just wants a job. She'd be happy even with part-time, maybe half-time or three-quarters time, but she needs some more income to maintain her quality of life. That should bother us, right? And we should begin talking to all the businesses, saying, all right, let's look at, if unemployment's so low, why don't we have some programs where we really help facilitate those people who want to work? Now, again, my stepfather does not want to work. I'm not saying anyone should have to, or deciding who should or who shouldn't. I'm just saying people should have choices as they go through their life. So our focus here is how to make sure we do everything we can in terms of people being better able to save for retirement, making sure that we have more effective caregivers. And again, people of all ages should be able to be caregivers, right, to recipients of all ages. And also make sure that people are prepared for the critical transitions of life. When you are going to leave your house and go into an assisted living home at some point, that you get the support you need to make the right decisions. So that's my pitch. I did bring, I'm not going to read it because you guys have all heard enough proclamations, but this is an official state proclamation, and the last whereas says, whereas Coloradans are today encouraged to recognize and celebrate our senior citizens for their enduring contributions to our state. Therefore, I, John W. Hickenlooper, Governor of the state of Colorado, do hereby proclaim March 21st, 2018 as Senior Day at the Capitol. So, the best part of these is almost always questions, and I think you'll get more. The what? you just have.
One over there and one right here. Tell me where. Okay.
There's a question. One and then two.
I had a question. My godmother recently passed away, and I found there was no legislation. The people that were hired to care for her had a complete license to steal with impunity. And as I searched through, this happened in New York, as I searched through going to the DA, going everywhere to the police, it was, yeah, that's what happens, you have to expect it. And the agency, a nonprofit that was hired to oversee her care, just said, yeah, that's fine, and they just walked away. And I mean, to steal from a dying woman is really hideous as far as I'm concerned, but I wondered, there doesn't seem to be any laws or any way to protect these people. I mean, the people who are in charge of her property don't have to do inventories. Everything is open. Is there anything that can be done to protect people like this?
So, and I'm sure you've heard this a million times before, there are immoral individuals, and I would argue immoral businesses, that function as predators on people that in so many cases don't have the capacity to take care, to defend themselves and to defend their property. There are laws against it. It's hard to sometimes get those laws enforced because gathering evidence, the level of what you need to prove to get a guilty plea, these things can be very challenging. We are constantly, I mean, this is a good, you're all here today, something you should bring up with the Speaker of the House and the Senate President, is that, we'd like some more muscle in the statutes to protect, and maybe you want an increasing penalty when someone is found guilty that makes it, each time district attorneys have all these things, all these crimes have been committed, and they've got to decide which ones they prosecute and which ones they don't. And part of that is if the punishment is more significant, then they are more likely to pursue, to view that as a significant crime. But that's an ongoing negotiation. And I wish there weren't predators out there like that.
Good luck in your run for president.
It almost seems like it's sanctioned. I mean, it seems simple to me that if the guardian of the property should be required to do an inventory, to do all of these things so that there is something. But no, everybody just goes, yeah, just expect.
I agree, but the only way to do that is to get a statute passed, right? I don't think that's in rules and regulations, the governor's office. And you guys have tremendous power, right? I mean, you bring something up like that, get it written down on get down to 1 page or 2 pages. You'll meet a whole ton of senators and legislators, representatives today. You'll see some that naturally have an inclination to work with golden agers, seniors, my wife would make me say. But I think that's where that happens. I agree with you completely. Pass the mic down this side.
Thank you.
No, right just across. There we go.
Good morning, sir. We hear a lot about percentages, 17%, 10%. How many of us seniors are in the state? Seniors, I'm sorry, golden, yes, in the state of Colorado. You need a big number to, nobody knows.
Above 60 or 65?
Let's go with 65, please.
Above 60, the last time I checked,
well, that's good.
Over 1 million people.
Over 1 million. So we have 4 million in the state, but
no, we have 5.5 million. So if you take 20% of 5.5 million, it's 1.2 million, right?
Right.
My math right? Pretty close. Close enough for government work.
Guess I don't want to.
Shouldn't say that. Yeah, question right here, and then we'll go over there. Who's got the other
one here? John, John, when you run for president, good luck. And what would you do that the present occupant, who is the oldest person I understand ever win, so when we talk about being represented by our elder contemporaries, keep in mind that everybody who is elderly is not working for the elderly. So what would you do as president to help elderly people that the present person is not doing?
Well, one thing I want to make perfectly clear, and I'm sure there are a number of people in the room that supported President Trump. I think President Trump was elected. I think a lot of people think government was too big, and it was too bureaucratic, and that he talked a mean streak about how he was going to drain the swamp, and I think people felt that Washington's out of control and that would be useful. The thing to remember about President Trump. A friend of mine told me this years ago, when someone reveals himself to you, believe them, right? And so he is the same person he's been for decades. And so that's what it is. If I was president, I'd do pretty much what we're trying to do here, which is make sure we have a strong economy, try to make the government more efficient and more effective so that people believe in government again. I think that's a big reason why he got elected, was people don't believe in government. And in a democracy, if people don't believe in government, we're at risk. We're all at risk, right? And in democracy, if we don't like who is making the decisions and who got elected, we should elect someone else. And I suspect President Trump's going to have a difficult, not impossible, but a difficult re-election for a variety of reasons. What we've tried to do here is to make sure that, just what I was saying, how do we improve quality, maintain coverage in healthcare, but control costs? And I think that controlling costs is going to have to become a mantra for how we do everything. How do we build highways less expensively? How do we make sure we have mobility less expensively and safer? Again, the same thing. You don't want to sacrifice safety for cost savings. But long term, that's going to be, how do we retrain people? Look at automation, right? Self-driving vehicles. All these people are going to lose their jobs, and there are going to be all these new jobs. Trust me, I'm not worried about, we're going to have tons and tons of new jobs, but we've got to retrain people much more effectively than we did in the 1980s and the 1990s when we lost so many, when factories, those jobs got outsourced to overseas. anyway, that to me is the primary goal of the next 10, 15 years, is to make sure that we do have, you know, an inclusive economic system where everybody gets a real shot at the American dream. That's it. Thank you. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
About 30 years ago, California passed Prop 13 to protect seniors so they could stay in their home. If they bought a house 40 years ago, their tax base could only go up 2% a year. How about that happening in our state of Colorado?
Well, so I think it's a fair question. If you actually look at us compared to almost every other state, California being an exception, but we have the Gallagher Amendment. And so we pay less for compare the value of your home and look at what you pay in taxes compared to, you know, any state on either coast, but compared to Wisconsin, compared to Ohio, New York. I mean, our taxes are way low. So you wouldn't get that big of savings, right? You'd get some savings. I'm not saying you wouldn't, but the fact that our residential taxes are already so low for everyone else, I don't know how we'd keep the lights on. I mean, I'm always happy to look at everything, but that's the last time I checked, my cousin lives in Minneapolis, and his taxes per $1,000 of value in your home, his taxes are about 8 times higher than what we pay here. As are theirs, I agree. Values are going up. It's not a good situation. Seniors, I mean, in Colorado, we have a seniors exemption. If you're not getting that, you should be getting that. It saves that first slice of your, the biggest slice of your property taxes. You don't get the exemption? Yeah. Well, but that's a big chunk, right, for most of us. You must have one of the bigger, more expensive houses. All right, one more question. Okay.
Okay, we have, when you drive down the street, and for seniors, I get lost now. Because I get lost. There are so many, you take the Amazon buildings, you take the new huge complexes that are going in, everywhere you look, we have a beautiful, they've torn down neighborhoods, we've got beautiful high-rises going up, we have a lot of things happening. But you get on the highway and it's stopped.
Yeah.
What's happening?
So here's and I think I'm right on the same page with you. We have succeeded in creating jobs, attracting entrepreneurs. U.S. News and World Report came out last week and said for the second year in a row, said that Colorado has the #1 economy in America, right? And that should be our goal. Our goal is so that your grandchildren will be able to come back to Colorado and live where they grew up and get a decent job. What we have to do, and we have not done, and the problem is in this building, and I'll take my share of the blame, is we have to invest in our infrastructure, right? So we haven't done significant addition. It is certainly way overdue. It's never too late. And that much I can guarantee. And keep in mind, people say, well, we've grown too much, we don't want to grow anymore. Nothing stays the same. And if you're not growing, you're going to shrink. And once you start shrinking as an economy, boy, you talk about your taxes going up and things like that, everything gets a lot harder. So we're in that difficult place where we want to keep growing, but we've got to get infrastructure, roads and transportation, and I think we're going to get that done this session. Famous last words. You badger the senators, you badger the representatives when you meet them today, but I think we're close to getting a significant solution. We're always going to have a little more traffic than we did before. The one other thing I'll say, because you say you get lost and all, at least in Denver, most of that development has been in the old commercial, kind of abandoned warehouse districts, right? Kind of north of Rhino and north of downtown, or out in the Platte Valley, just goes up. But you do get lost, and the kids all have this technology, right? They have these smartphones, and they know how to use them. I was back in Philadelphia. I visited my stepfather. I was there for 2 days, And so I spent a couple of hours with him each day trying to teach him how to use Waze and the maps and to be able to text. Because he's smart. I mean, he's 90, but he's smart. And he was beginning to get it. But for him, you know, my son, this is like, it's like using a rotary phone, right, for where I grew up. And yet for my stepfather, he really has to work at it, right? My wish and my advice would be keep working at it, right? And it is frustrating. This is a new Apple. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It doesn't do what it always used to, the old one used to do. It's very frustrating. But I think the lesson, and doctors and people keep telling me this stuff, don't quit. When you're trying to learn something new or trying to figure something out, keep at it. Just keep. And my stepfather texted me on Monday and just says he's figuring it out. You guys have a great day.
Governor John Hickenlooper, everybody. Thank you. You know, we talk about, you're going to come up. We talk about how you become an activist for the things that are, the emotional connections that you have for what happened to you, to your loved one. We talk about whether it's happening when assisted living or in nursing homes, whatever it may be, or even congestion. When you have these things on your mind, what is it that you do and can you make a difference? I'd like you all please to welcome Kelly Horton, our Colorado Senior Lobby board member who actually did make that difference, and she's going to tell you a quick story. Thank you so much. Kelly Horton.
Good morning. First of all, I want to start by saying I am so humbled to be on this side of the podium. Last year I was standing up there with my back against the wall, looking at everyone talking about legislation and knowing that I had a passion and not sure if I could make it turn into action. So I want to tell you a little bit about what happened that allowed me to stand here today. First of all, I'd like to ask how many people in this room, by a show of hands, can tell me whether you care for someone with dementia, or you know someone that does, or you have at some point in your life? Show of hands, please. Thank you. This is the reason for House Bill 18-1091. I don't know if any of you are fully aware of it. There's an article in our newsletter about it, but let me just read very quickly. House Bill 18-1091, Dementia Diseases and Related Disabilities. Concerning dementia diseases and in connection therewith, updating statutory references to dementia diseases and related disabilities. Sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook, so let me kind of explain a little bit. What we did was we went through all of the statutes throughout Colorado history to look at the wording for what we now call dementia. Before it might have been something like senility. My grandmother passed away from aging senility about 25 years ago. Then it became more commonly known as Alzheimer's, which is the most common form of dementia, but it's just one type. Now, see, I've been in the aging industry for well over 25 years now, and my area of interest, my area of passion is working with people with dementia. To the point that I went back to school about 5 years ago, and now I'm just getting ready to complete a master's in in dementia studies at Regis, where I'm going to move forward with my doctorate. And what I'm really interested in is when someone is diagnosed, why is it that we automatically assume that they're no longer there. They are a shell. That's what I keep hearing, or all these negative stories. I can tell you now, not just here in the US, but overseas, we are recognizing that dementia is actually a disability. People are still there. We're able to connect and communicate. Well, I had heard that at the federal level, they had already signed on to a proposition of dementia care plan through the World Health Organization as well as the UN, but nobody had done anything about it. I'm standing back there last year and thinking, why not us? Why not make Colorado the first state to actually grab this and say enough? So as a community, we came together, and let me tell you how quickly this happened. A year ago, I was across the street. If you weren't thinking of going to lunch, please make this encourage you, or hopefully this will encourage you. I was across the street. I saw one of the representatives, Joanne Janal, and she walked past me, and I chased her. And I said, I think I have an idea on a bill. Can I meet you? And she gave me her card. So then within a week, and she is a Democrat, within a week, I also had reached out to House Representative Susan Beckman, who is a Republican, and she also was interested, and we all met together. And we talked about, and I just gabbed and gabbed. God bless them. And they listened, and that's what they do. And they told me then how to step back and let them do their jobs. They know their jobs. I have a passion, and I know my passion. And it was the marriage of those two things. And then the excitement started. We met through the summer. We began to talk about, well, where is this going to go? And then they came up with the idea of this particular bill. And we formed a committee, and we asked other outside groups to join with us. And quite frankly, it was to see if we were going to encounter opposition. And then at the first of this year, ends up that the bill was written and introduced. And this is how quickly it happened. And then I'm going to step back because I want to tell you CSL's role in all of this, because this is not done just with myself and my passion and the representatives at all. It was introduced on January 18th. It was then in the House, and then it was introduced to the Health Insurance and Environment Committee. And I'm reading this because I still don't know all of the names of the committees. That's how much of a rookie I still am. And then it went to second and third reading by the end of February and was introduced to the Health and Human Services Committee under Senator Smallwood in the Senate on February 28th. Every time it was read and voted on, it passed unanimously. Then this past Monday, House Bill 18-1091 was signed both by the President of the House, or I'm sorry, the, what do we call him? Speaker of the House. See what I'm saying here? And you could be up here next year. And also the President of the Senate, and went to the governors. Really what this comes down to is I had a passion. I didn't even have a dream. I do have an idea of how I want seniors to be honored and valued when they are diagnosed with dementia. It is not a reason to disengage and die. It's a place to start and say, okay, now what's my next step? This is just another phase. And we can make this something that is not all about the tears for those that are left behind. But as far as CSL is concerned, I cannot even begin to tell you why it was so important, imperative for me to be a member. Within a year and a half of being a member of the Colorado Senior Lobby, that's when I was standing up there. I knew nothing about legislation. They had my back the entire way. So between the legislators, Ed Shackelford asked me to speak at a Monday morning meeting about my passion regarding dementia, where I got disconnected. I was calling in, I got disconnected, and they waited for me to call back. How cool is that? Because they knew it was important to me. And then throughout, they quietly guided me or made suggestions. They also provided the majority of the testimony for both the both committees, for the Senate as well as the House. So when it comes right down to it, my grandmother taught me 3 things, the one that passed from Alzheimer's, because she raised my brothers and sisters and myself. There are 6 of us. And what she said, and she grew up during the Depression, you hold to 3 things. Always leave things better than you found them. People want to be heard, understood, and accepted. And finally, if you aren't part of the solution, you are part of the problem. Well, I went to look that up when I was preparing this, and I gotta tell you, this is really interesting to me. Eldridge Cleaver is the gentleman that first said this, but here is the actual quote. There is no more neutrality in the world. And I'm going to say that part again. There is no more neutrality in the world. You either have to be part of the solution or you are going to be part of the problem. What I'm asking you to do today is come, join Colorado Senior Lobby and bring your passion with you. And then come help us be a part of the solution for all seniors in Colorado. Thank you.
Being here. My name is Lois Landgraf. I am from El Paso County, just, yay. Well, you may stop clapping. I am just off of Milton Proby, so just outside Colorado Springs. My bio says Fountain. I no longer live in Fountain, but close enough. So I'm proud to represent Fort Carson. In my district, I have about 20,000 veterans. So I do run quite a few bills for vets and mental health and human trafficking and just kind of different topics. Last night, I was very happy to pass, along with Representative Buckner, who just left, a bill that will put a marijuana derivative drug that's going through the FDA, has no THC in it, so it is not marijuana, but it's derived from that. When it passes the FDA, it will go into pharmacies, and it is specifically for kids who have uncontrollable seizures, and there are no other treatments. So this product is very important. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that, because you never know how the reaction's going to be. As soon as you mention marijuana. And I have to tell you, I did not vote for marijuana. I did not support it. I still don't support it. But a product like this is necessary, and it is helping people, and it's certainly bringing my mind around to the possibility, the probability that there's a lot of good to be found in this product. And so, you know, I'm pressing forward with hope that we can kind of iron out the problems we're seeing with marijuana and take the good from it. Because a product like this is certainly going to be beneficial. This particular business is also testing a similar product for Alzheimer's. And imagine, just imagine the possibility of finding a product that will help people with Alzheimer's disease. What would it matter where it came from, as long as it's safe and controlled and available? So, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much.
A lot of good information. Michael B. Hancock is Denver's 45th mayor. During his time in office, Mayor Hancock and his administration have eliminated the city's budget deficit, fostered a diverse economy, and restored much-needed services that were lost during the recession. With a drive toward increasing opportunity for every resident, he has prioritized innovative solutions to investing in the city's children and youth, increasing mobility options, affordable housing and services for the homeless, supporting economic mobility, entrepreneurs and small businesses, and making government work smarter for its residents. Prior to becoming mayor, he served as the Denver City Council for 8 years and was president of the Metro Denver Urban League. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Michael B. Hancock.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Senior Day at the Capitol. I'm proud to come and talk to you a little bit about some of the things we're doing in Denver, because while a lot of people know across the nation that Denver has become this destination for millennials, what most people don't realize is that we're number 3. Our metro area is number 3 in the nation for baby boomers. People are moving to our metro area at an extraordinary time, in extraordinary numbers. And as you can imagine, as you know, as we know all too well in this city, we are seeing upward pressure with regards to our housing. And obviously, if you drove here this morning, you know the impact on our roads with congestion, and we are seeing it dramatically. Let me tell you about something. 1/3 of our residents in Denver, and I would venture to say in our metro area, are what we call overburdened with their rent and mortgage payments, meaning that if they're paying more than 30% of their income on rent or mortgage, they're overburdened. And when that happens, we have diminishing opportunities for other things like our medication, recreation, food and nutrition, the things we enjoy in life, like maybe taking a trip here or there. Even our transportation options become minimized with regards to our ability to pay for them. And so what we know today is that in our community, particularly in Denver, specifically talking about Denver, 1/3 of our seniors are overburdened. The fastest growing population of our homeless are senior women. They represent 20% of our homeless population. We have done a couple things to try to blunt what we are seeing in Denver, because this is extraordinary. One, in 2012, my administration doubled our rebate program for seniors in Denver. And we made a commitment, we're going to continue to fund it every year to make sure that we're helping our seniors get the assistance they need with regards to our rising tax burden in the city of Denver. One of the things that you can help us do, and by the way, let me acknowledge the members of our Commission on Aging in the city of Denver who are here and who've helped us to formulate a lot of our strategies and policies. I know they're in the room. Have you been acknowledged? Well, stand up. I want to acknowledge you. You work for our Commission on Aging. Would you please? I want to thank them for their service. Thank you. And the director of that commission, Perla Gaylor, is here as well. Thank you, Perla, for your leadership. But yes, please give her some love. But what we've done is not only to double our assistance with regards to our tax rebate, and what you can help us do is, what we learned is that a lot of seniors don't know that assistance is available to them. And we need to spread that word as quickly as possible.
The other thing Denver did was to institute a program this year. We actually did it in November. I want you to listen to this extraordinary number. We dedicated $800,000 last year to a program called TRUA, and it's our Temporary Rental and Utility Assistance Program. And basically, if you were having temporary challenges, you can make a call and we would assist you with your rent, maybe your mortgage payment, your utility bill. Sometimes things happen, and if you're on a fixed income, it could be extremely disruptive and damaging, quite frankly, to your sustainability. It could be a flat tire. It could be a temporary medication you need that, you know, quite frankly, is more expensive than you expected it to be. Whatever the case may be, we set this $800,000 up. Between November and January, all $800,000 was gone. Kind of underscoring the tremendous, and I use this term extraordinary over and over again, extraordinary need that's in our community. And we are reevaluating and putting another $800,000 up, but first we want to make sure we know where our greatest needs are so we can be more effective with it and be more focused with it. But it's just to underscore what's needed in this community. So let me just tell you a couple things we've also done. We are doing what we can to usher in pipeline of more senior housing developments in Denver. We've got to get more housing for our seniors in the city of Denver, affordable housing. The other one thing is we passed what we call our ADU initiative, our accessory dwelling units. Some of your children are my brothers and sisters and I. We have homes that possibly have garages or at least enough on our land to build an accessory dwelling unit for our parent. And what we've done is pass an initiative in Denver to allow for people to build those accessory dwelling units on their units so that their mothers, their fathers, their parents, or others in their family could live, and again, to create affordable housing. But let me finish with this. We also believe in something else. Being age-friendly is not just about housing, though we know that's critically important. I got to tell you, in January or December of last year, I was extremely proud to initiate what we call the My Denver Prime. And this comes from watching my mother and doing everything I can to encourage her to come out of our house at age 79 and go to the rec center down the street and engage in something. I don't care what you do, just go. Get in front of the television, stay active. And my mother said, I can't afford the membership in that rec center. So last year, Denver, I signed an initiative and told my staff, go find how we can take care of our seniors in our city. And they came back and they created the My Denver Prime. And today, starting January, every person 60 and older has free access to our rec programs in the city of Denver, our swimming pools. And I want you to know how this has changed. Last year at this time, there were 1,400 seniors who were members of our rec program. Today, there are over 4,000 members in our city. So they're using it. They have quadrupled the number of seniors who are walking in our doors, who are swimming in our therapy pools, who are getting in the swimming pool and taking lessons in the pool, who are going to yoga and going to exercise classes, and who are staying active, who are going in and playing chess or ceramics or playing cards and taking trips up to the mountains. This is about quality of life, and we recognize that it's much more than just making sure there's a roof over our head. We want to make sure our seniors have a quality of life. We're not done. We're going to keep going. But our Aging Commission is going to continue to help advise us on things that we can do to help our seniors feel much at home. Let me finish on this. And that is, we also recognized that many of you are retiring at an age where you're still healthy and active. I don't know, when I was older, when my grandmother retired, she was just tired and done. She wasn't working no more. She said, I'm finished. But today, we're able to retire, we're more active and we're more healthy. And so as I've met with seniors, they said, help us to identify second career opportunities. And if we can do that, we will make sure that we extend life and we extend the quality of life of our seniors in our community. So our workforce development team is working to do just that, to create opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities, seniors who may want to go into schools and be helpful, to go into some of our rec centers and be helpful, to work with other our private sector companies, to be at our airport. There are opportunities where we can put folks to work through the city, but also through our private sector partners, and we're going to continue to work hard to do just that. Thank you for being the hallmark of who you are in our communities, in our cities, because it's your wisdom, it's your leadership that gives us guidance on how we keep our cities vibrant and active. God bless you all. Enjoy your senior day.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Mayor. Stick around for a question. Can you stick around for a question? Questions, anyone? You know where the mics are. Who has a question for Michael? I shouldn't say that. Who has a question for Mayor Hancock?
You're all right. That's how most seniors in my community address me, as Michael, having grown up in Denver.
Good
Yes,
morning.
ma'am. Good morning.
And thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We can hear you.
I am concerned. I am afraid I'm going to get up in the morning and turn on my kitchen water tap and there will be no water. This building and construction, I'm from Park Hill, as you are, and I've lived here 40 years, and the amount of housing that's going in and the amount of construction for a fancy hotel called Gaylord scares me. Can you put some pressure on the water department to put a moratorium on water taps?
No. To answer, I mean, that's the quick answer to your question is that I don't have the authority to do that. But let me say this about water, because it's a very valid, your question's a very important one. And Gaylord is in Aurora. It's a completely different water supply. So I think that's important to note as well. And by the way, most of the water out there is being unused. And so we actually have to dispense of water in that area of town because of, becomes corrosive and when it's not used coming through the pipes. So that development in that area is important because we can use the resources. But let me make a point about water. And it's one that we have to continue to watch and monitor, particularly as we develop and grow as a region, and particularly and specifically Denver, Colorado. Denver Water Board has done a tremendous job in measuring and helping all of us conserve, help us learn what we can do to conserve. And we as a city have done a tremendous job in conserving. Do we have to be smarter and more efficient going forward? Absolutely, particularly with this development. But I want you to know that when we went through our last drought, people of Denver were asked to hold back. If you watered 3 days a week, maybe go to 2. And if you watered your zones for 20 minutes, maybe drop down to 12 or 10 or 12. The interesting thing is as the moratorium or the restrictions were lifted, the people of Denver never went back to their normal practice. And we've saved money. And you all might remember the campaign, Use Only What You Need. That has helped us conserve a lot of water. It's not enough. What the biggest challenge and threat to us is the lack of snow in the mountains. That's our biggest threat. Not the development. Development plays a role, but it's the lack of snow in the mountains because that's where our water comes from. And so they're doing a better job of protecting, preserving the water we do have, creating new developments and new energy and technologies. Some of us have been encouraged to xeriscape, so we don't have these large landscapes anymore. That's happening in Denver. So people become more efficient, and it's helping us to conserve. But we've got to continue to move forward those policies even more aggressively as we develop and grow as a city. So great question and right on target.
Thank you.
Yeah? You done? Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, boss. You bet.
I have a quick question. I know we're running a tight schedule. Can we take a break, or how can we break?
Well, we got Lieutenant Governor Lynne coming any minute.
Right.
We want to recognize our seniors. We've got Representative Valdez. How do you want to play it?
Okay. Anybody need a break? Yes, yes, yes. So, no? No? Okay. So just stretch your hands then. Stretch your hands up. Everybody just stretch. Stand up for a second if you can. If you need to go to the restrooms, please go. We can't make you not do that. We don't want to not have that. So we're going to keep moving. We want to keep moving. All right, we're going to keep moving. I'm taking cues from everybody. We're going to keep moving. So, Steve? All right. We can get you to the podium.
Thank you and welcome, everyone. Let's go like this real quick. So when we clap like this. My name is Donald Valdez, State Representative for House District 62, and it's an honor to be here at your state capitol. The People's House and your place here in the great state of Colorado. Where is House District 62? It's in southern Colorado, from Pueblo to the New Mexico border, from the Continental Divide to I-25. I represent 8 counties, and I see some of my friends, my family, my neighbors here. And how important is that? That's huge, huge to me. But also, we need to continue representing you, but all people, all of us in the great state of Colorado. Yes, we have a lot of issues, but more importantly, our resources, and our resources such as our water. How essential is water on all levels? Snowpack, our watersheds, our ecology in our river streams, our communities, agriculture, the food that we eat on a daily basis. Those that are all from point A to point B. And we need to be very wise and analyze every aspect and educate others how the importance of our water, our soils, but most importantly, the people and those that came before us and those that will continue to grow. The next generation, our children. We need education now more than ever on all aspects, all issues. I'm proud to be here, and I thank you for being here. I would gladly like to speak more, but I would like to reserve that time for another individual that just walked in the room. And I'm honored to work side by side with her on issues that concern all of us. And she's doing an excellent job on all levels. And I want to tell you, keep working hard, but most importantly, keep smiling. And I challenge you to bring somebody up and educate them on the issues we have today. Thank you very much, and welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Colorado Senior Lobby Board Member Harvey McWhorter.
Good morning. It's my honor. I'm going to be introducing our Lieutenant Governor, Donna Lynne. She spoke last year, and was anyone here last year? Anyone remember what she spoke about? Well, if you do, maybe we can ask her some of the questions. I have a whole list of her background. Would you guys like me to read that? No. All right. Well, I'm easy. And I told her I don't know how to introduce her, so she said, just tell them she kicks. You fill in the blank. But our Lieutenant Governor, Donna Lynne.
Well, good morning. My apologies to those of you who are behind me. And really, Harvey and I have actually known each other for a long time, so he did have permission to say what he said. So if I offended anybody, I'm sorry. Well, it is a great turnout to see this many people here, both in this chamber, but also out around the building, who are trying to talk about the issues that confront the aging population. And I'm going to put myself in that category. I've been an AARP member for 14 years, and I got my Medicare notice this year to go sign up, so I'll be doing that. I know you've heard from the governor. I was actually with him just before he came up to see you right around 10 o'clock, and from Wade, who were just really thrilled that he has taken on this role as our new senior advisor on aging. And as you know, his role is to really stretch out his tentacles across our entire state, because the issues that we're talking about with the aging population touch pretty much every department in the state of Colorado, from transportation to education, thinking about how we might focus more on adult education, to housing, to healthcare, obviously. So we're thrilled that we got the funding to establish this position and that Wade joined us. And that is part of what I talked about last year because we were in the midst of trying to find that funding. So I want to add a little bit of perspective about my role as the Chief Operating Officer. And as Harvey said, I don't need a description to tell you a long resume, but I do want to tell you about both the work that I did prior to taking on this role and the work that I do now. Some of you may know I was in charge of Kaiser Permanente in 5 states, including Colorado, and was really excited about the work that Kaiser was doing, both to implement the Affordable Care Act, which I know impacts many people in this room and many people around our state, but to really think creatively, not just about health insurance or health care, but about health. And trying to keep us all active, engaged, and healthy was really an important part of the mission of that organization. I've been the Lieutenant Governor for the last 2 years, and what the governor wanted to do was to really have a chief operating officer, somebody who, whatever cliche we want to use, kept the trains running on time, kicked whatever, but part of my job is to make sure that our state employees, 31,000 of them, are doing for you what they ought to be doing, and to give them some leadership and some direction. And you may know that we actually track the things that we do, like any good business or any good government organization. So when we want to put a stake in the ground to whether it's improve traffic, get more people to graduate from school in 4 years, improve our suicide rate, even things that are partly outside of our reach as a state. We can't control some of the social factors, but recognizing what they are and trying to provide services is very much part of our mission. And making sure that as you pay us taxes, that we are being we have a phrase we use here in the state, and that is efficient, elegant, and effective. And elegant is another way of talking about customer service, which we think we owe all of you, whatever it is that we're doing. The other thing that I do, in addition to trying to make sure that each of our various departments, and you know we have lots of acronyms in the state around our departments, CDPHE, CDHS, et cetera, but there are a lot of things like aging issues that transcend those departments, that cut across those departments. And part of my job is trying to break down the silos, make sure that we're collaborating and we're getting involved in some of the biggest issues that we have in this state. And certainly the aging of our population is one of them. And I know you know that this is the segment where we are seeing the largest percentage growth in our population, and that we'll have over 1.2 million residents in Colorado over the age of 65 just by 2030. It's not that far away. And again, part of what we have to do is not just see what's going to happen, but plan for what is going to happen. Our departments, like the Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing, that implement the Medicaid program, Department of Public Health and the Environment, that provides many public health services, both physical health and behavioral health, and our Department of Human Services have great experience serving Colorado seniors' needs, and many, many more of them I know touch you, including taxes. We are ready to take on issues as they come at us, and are really dedicated to hearing from you about the issues that you're seeing in our state, because they represent every community, every political viewpoint, and pretty much every topic imaginable. What I'd love to do is to stop talking and hear from you about some issues that might be impacting you as well. So that's the most important part of being here, is to hear from you and to try to answer your questions. And thank you, and we've got one right there.
Lack of funding for, housing for seniors, education for children. have we ever thought of a state bank? I look around coming down here on the bus, big, huge buildings, this bank, that bank. They make a profit. If it's a state bank, that profit stays within a state, not with a corporation.
So we have there's two things actually that I've thought about, and oh, I'm sorry. The question was, have we ever thought about a state bank? In other words, a bank that could do lending, whether it's to individuals, I'm going to paraphrase this, or to developers who would develop housing that is directed for seniors, partly because of the profit motive that's in some of our for-profit institutions. Sure.
State bank is, we have a lot of marijuana money.
A lot of what?
Marijuana money, profit. There's no place to put it. You can't put it in a bank.
Right.
If we had a state bank, that would be a place to deposit it. Some of our housing issues, the cost of housing is because that profit from marijuana has to go someplace. They are buying up homes and property, and then you can sell it, and then it's not marijuana money anymore.
Okay, so there's a couple of questions in there. One, just so I'm clear, the actual money, so when we tax marijuana, the state taxes it as well as the local jurisdiction. Where that money goes is very earmarked. It goes to education, it goes to build our, repair some of our schools, some of it goes to enforcement, some of it goes to education about marijuana, because we don't want young people who from a development point of view, we don't want them using marijuana. It's okay when you're an adult, but not when you're young. So the money is earmarked. Now, you're asking, could the profits from marijuana, or even the cash flow from marijuana, because we don't have a banking system that does that. We actually do have a couple of credit unions that are taking money. Could it go to a state bank? I have not thought about that question, but I have thought a lot about your first question, which is, what could we do about housing issues in this state? And when I first came here, I said, tell me, you know, like any good person that comes into a new organization, how are we organized? And we have a Department of Natural Resources, of Transportation, of Healthcare. We don't have a housing department in our state. That is unusual, I will tell you. I've worked in government in other places, and usually you have a housing department. Now, this isn't just government bureaucracy. If you don't have somebody helping you think strategically about an issue like housing, you're going to have lots of problems. And housing is complicated, as you know. It's a private sector issue. It's a city and county issue. But at the state level, we do focus on homeless housing, but we don't focus on affordable housing for middle-income people, for people whose needs are changing. And I think we need a housing department. And I've made a promise that, I don't want to get political, if I get a promotion that I'm applying for, that I will create a housing department to deal with these issues. So, I do think, and the financing mechanism could very much be part of that. How do we have money? Sometimes there are land trusts that also can be intertwined with that, as well as, honestly, the state itself has a lot of land. And we should think about how we could free up some of that land to provide more affordable housing for seniors. So, there is a question over there.
But we have some serious need for some Medicaid reform that impacts the seniors. For example, we have so many assisted livings and wonderful nursing facilities that are willing to take not just those who have dementia, but also have some behavioral health issues. Every professional in this room can tell you that the severe need we have to be able to serve both people, but because of the regulations and the guidelines by our state Medicaid, those buildings are unable to accept them. And so we find a lot of our homeless population are seniors over the age of 60, 62, who have nowhere to go because of the regulations. So can we please have better conversations about reform?
Yes, so what I'd like you to do is when I leave, and I know I'm going to get the hook at some moment, correct? Am I going to get the hook? Is that why you're standing up? Yes. I'm pretty good. I've learned a lot over the years. Why don't you meet me outside? I'll take your card, and happy to have a dialogue about that. I do think, first of all, totally supportive of trying to make sure we have people who have not only behavioral health care but other health care issues, that they are in a place that allows them to live their life. Not in an institution where, as we all know, you get other illnesses and infections when you're at that top level. And you feel lonely, and you don't feel like you can have your friends around you. So, and so how we continue to do community-based living for the senior population, for the disabled population, I think is a really important conversation, and I'm happy to meet you out the door. And I'm also happy to say thank you, because I see she's about to come and tap me on the shoulder. So thanks for allowing me to be here.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Lynne. We knew that when we were planning Senior Lobby that we would not have the opportunity to get to each situation, each question, each conversation. So we would ask you to please stick around with us for lunch. These individuals may not be with us for lunch, but we can surely continue some of the dialogue and some of the conversation with these most important issues. Now, my next task, serving our Senior Citizens Recognition Award. We started this last year, and basically we just want to recognize some seniors in our state who are doing some amazing work. Sisters Enterprise is a nonprofit organization founded in 2005 by co-founders and sisters, real sisters, Betty Reynolds Funderburk and Eleanor Reynolds Brown comprise this organization while inspiring others and acknowledging random acts of kindness, and they expect no compensation in return. Sisters Enterprise is making positive strides to make our community and world a better, kinder, and a more livable one. How many of you are in favor of a kinder, gentle, more livable country? Absolutely, absolutely. Random acts of kindness can include a variety of good deeds, including but not limited to open the doors for the disabled, helping feed the hungry, assist the elderly with tasks such as preparing meals, cutting grass, shoveling snow, visiting the sick and shut in, transportation, housekeeping, or something really simple as sending a card to acknowledge. Their religion is simple. Their religion is kindness. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you one of the sisters for Sisters Enterprise, Betty Reynolds Funderburk.
An honor and a privilege to be here today. A lot of people in the world don't know. They are here because of some people that were young people at one time. They're now elders and seniors. We have a lot to offer, and our organization wants to continue to remind others, don't ignore the seniors. Do all you can to be as good as you can, to honor them, lift them up, make them feel good. Help them remember you are special in our community. Thank you for this opportunity. I also want to mention we have another of our officers here with us, our Vice President of Sisters Enterprise, Sheila Robinson. She has a lot to offer. Please don't hesitate if you see us around town, and if we are doing something to try to encourage random acts of kindness, not only for our seniors, but everyone. God bless you and thank you. Thank you.
All right, another round of applause, please, for Betty. I saw Janet Buckner. Did she? Oh, she had a phone call. She had to leave. Okay. Any other representatives in the House we need to? All right. Rich again? All right. Rich is coming back up.
I guess this is the filler time. We're waiting, hopefully, for a couple more legislators to come. So I talked a little bit, and so did Kelly Fritz, about some of the legislation. Maybe I should start by saying, I can go into more detail, which would probably bore the heck out of you guys, but I could do that unless there are some questions. Is anybody in the room got other questions?
I know that Kip does.
About legislative, of the audience first.
Well, it is the audience. It's from them this morning.
Are there other, have you been following any other legislative issues, senior issues at the Capitol that you got questions on? Do I see any? There's one here. Oh. Go ahead. That's a statement, not a question.
It's not a question. I would just like you to know that seniors care about gun control. It's not limited to just our young students.
Thank you.
What did she say?
Right behind, yeah. Wait, microphone.
I didn't think I needed it. As a senior, I'm just really consumed about mental health issues. I have twin daughters, both are bipolar, and I'm spending more and more of my time, including today. I'm being forced. I have been retired 17 years, and today I am being interviewed for a job. I'm getting so pressured. And besides the lack of resources for them, I have spent more time going to the psychiatrist's office, going to the mental health center, going to hospitals, and I think particularly of last summer, I spent months trying to advocate for them, particularly one of them. She was having quite an episode and depressed and, off medications, whatnot. By the way, she is now currently getting ECT. She's right in the process today of getting ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. And, well, it's a court of last resort because we've run out of resources, quite literally. We don't even have a psychiatrist at the mental health center. There is no psychiatrist at the South Branch Mental Health Center because they can't afford it, is what they tell me. So we're sitting here with lack of resources. I tried for months to get her a bed in a hospital. It took months, and she finally ended up, since there were no available beds in Denver, in Colorado Springs. And then they were in a hurry to get her out. Lack of resources, concern. What's going on in this state to give me some hope that just maybe we're going to put a little more resources into mental health? Because there is practically nothing, let me tell you. I have tried and tried, and I can't believe the lack of resources for mental health. And it takes its pressure on me, because I have to do something to help. Okay.
Thank you for that. I would just say, I think that's one of those issues that for many years people didn't talk about that much, and it kind of flew under the radar, and not much attention is being paid, and it's probably fair to say still not enough attention is being paid to it. A couple of things real quick. I do know that There's going to be a candidate forum Friday, I think, for candidates for governor that Mental Health Colorado organization is sponsoring. If you're not able to attend that, because I don't have the information on the tips of my fingers, you could probably find it out, but hopefully that will get some coverage in the news, or you could find out from the organization how that was received at this. But it's good to see that there's an advocacy group out there that is presenting this issue before our elected officials or those who are running for office. But it's clearly one of those issues that does need to be given more attention down here at the legislature as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to also comment about the lack of treatment and funding for mental illness. I used to lobby for National Alliance for NAMI Colorado, National Alliance for Mental Illness, and now I'm chair of a group called Citizens for Fort Logan. We became an active group back in 2002 when the Joint Budget Committee was going to close Fort Logan. They had 200 and some odd beds at that time. They now have 75, and there's a waiting list. So maybe we ought to get together and talk about the money that we have in the state of Colorado should be spent more equitably on people who have a mental illness and substance abuse problems. There's a lot to be said. I could take up the whole day here, but anyway, I just had to say that I'm with you on that, and we need to do something about it.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we had a legislator show up, so I can stop filling. That's fine. Representative Jenny Art from Northern Colorado. Yes, thank you, Representative.
Oh, sure, thank you. Hi. Oh. Sorry, I didn't mean to barge in on you, but I was just on my way to something. So thank you very much for coming to the Capitol. And I'm from West Fort Collins, and I'm looking around. Who's from West Fort Collins or Fort Collins? Anybody? You had some earlier. Well, there's been a couple. Well, Fort Collins, I think, is a great place to live, play, work, learn, and exercise. And we have the senior centers in my district in Fort Collins. And what I particularly liked, well, first of all, I love that place. And second of all, there was a little movement to change the word from senior center to something else. And everybody got together, seniors and non-seniors, and said, no, that's the senior center. And, right? I know, right? There's no stigma there. That's the senior center. We love the senior center. Plus, any age can go. It's a great place to be. And then I just have to say one thing about how I view age is my mother is 81, and she just set her 4th world record on Saturday at the U.S. Track and Field National Championships. So she has won the Boulder 40 years in a row for her age group. She was named the best athlete that ever participated in the Boulder, male or female, for any age group. So I have a very unique perspective on age, and I'm 53, and I feel like I'm just haven't even hit my stride, and I'm pretty sure you haven't either. So I know how much you do for our community, and you're all on 2nd or 3rd careers. You never stop working and pulling for us, pulling for yourselves, pulling for our whole community. So I'm glad to have you here, and thank you for coming. Come back.
All right. Hey, Kelly, you want to talk about Kelly?
Yeah, I had a brief, I just wanted to let you know that on June 14, we're going to review all the legislation for the year. So if you want to put that into your calendar, it's going to be held at the DU, the Noble Institute for Aging, if you're familiar with that, and you'll be able to get information. We'll be mailing it out. We'll mail out to those that are on the mailing list. And at any rate, you'll be surprised that when we look at what happened for the year. So just so you know, and the Noble Institute for Aging was just set up within the last year or two with funding, and it's really become an important part of the aging issues.
If you can remember, ColoradoSeniorLobby.org. All that information is there. Also, Kelly, Kelly Horton, you were talking about, you had a comment about mental illness on our website? Turn it. No, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now? The information about the mental health events and that type thing, we're going to post those all on our website so that it's easy for you to access and then participate, and we encourage you to do that. Thank you.
All right, Kelly Fritz. One of the things that I'd like you all to welcome Kelly Fritz to the microphone one more time. I want to set a little bit of context here. One of the things that you know we've been talking about for years in this space is broadband for the entire state of Colorado. Get competitive. What an economic no-brainer it seems. And we have legislation passed, or at least close to being passed this year, on broadband. We're fixing the problem, it seems. But there's a big contextual picture of how one influences the other and leverages the effectiveness of pretty much all consumer issues, and as it relates to the PUC, which all of this stuff boils down into one nice little package. And there's our expert right there. Hit it.
I don't know that I'm an expert, but I've had to learn a lot about it since I've been at ARP. So out of curiosity, how many of you have broadband at home? Do you pretty good number. Yeah, that's a good question. How many of you don't? Not too many. Is it because it's not available in your neighborhood? You can't. So sometimes, okay, so it could be that you can't afford it or it's not in your neighborhood. Does anybody live in like rural Colorado, like really rural, not in town, but like outside of town? Leadville. Yes. Yes. Well, at ARP, we do believe that broadband should be available to everybody. We now view it as a utility. And why do we view it as a utility? Because a lot of things happen over broadband, including telehealth. Has anybody ever accessed through the computer, talked to your doctor? No, not yet? It's coming. It's more and more people are doing it, but it's not just for that reason that we support it. It's become a primary form of communication for people. So it's important. What? That's right. Well, it's kind of replaced phones. Truthfully, it kind of has. And I just want to say, okay, so a couple things about it. Senate Bill 2. It was the second bill introduced. It is a Senate priority. It was a priority for the governor, priority for the House leadership. And what it does, it's interesting because the question is, everybody wants broadband, but how are we going to pay for it? And that's the core thing. How are we going to pay for it? We've talked a little bit in here about fiscal constraints. The number one being Tabor. I'm just going to come out and say it. I'm a Tabor hater. I don't think there's anything good about Tabor. And broadband's one of those things. In part, we've had trouble as a state getting it out to all parts of the state because we don't have the money to fund it. So how are they going to fund it? Okay, here's my other question. Anybody here still on CenturyLink, still has a landline? Anybody? You guys get to pay for it. Did you know that? That's what Senate Bill 2 does. It's a funding mechanism. So what they're doing is money that would have been used to maintain your landlines is now going to be redirected to go to broadband expansion. That's how they're going to fund it. That's what this bill does. And it's to the tune of about $30 million a year. The first year it's only $18 million. It slowly escalates up to the $30 million a year to fund the broadband expansion. And to run cable, it's about $1 million a mile. And you can imagine here in Colorado trying to run cable up and down over mountains. That is not cheap. So $30 million is kind of a drop in the bucket. Not to say that it's not worth it, not to say that, everybody should have it. We want that. But again, how are they going to pay for it? And so all you lovely folks with landlines are actually you're the ones that get to pay for expanding broadband. How about that? You're giving me yeah, more and more people are cutting off the landline. I mean, that is what's happening. A couple years ago, I was in here talking about that. They were deregulating landlines. The last service that's still regulated is 911. And even that's kind of a loose understanding that it's regulated by the Public Utilities Commission. The bill that I was talking about a little bit earlier, 1184, what it does, or the concept, is to move the regulation from the Public Utilities Commission to the Department of Homeland Security, which is another way, again, because they're not going to regulate it. And the thing is, who's pushing this? It's being led by AT&T and the Comcast and the cable companies. And the reason why is because they don't want any regulation whatsoever over any kind of communication, none. And cable isn't regulated at all now. They can do whatever they want. So, we're fighting to make sure that at least 911 is regulated. And why is that such a big deal? Again, when you call 911, you want to be connected to those services. And this bill, if it goes through, as it is, as it's currently sitting, basically says that, if your call gets dropped or whatever, they're not responsible. And there's nobody for you to complain to. Basically, you got to go and you got to sue them or whatever, and they're probably going to subject you to arbitration. We were talking about that earlier, too. So these are some of the issues around that. But anyway, again, broadband, good concept. We really like it. But again, no regulation. They can raise your rates whenever they want to, for whatever reason. I have Comcast now, and my phone line is VoIP. Do you guys know what I mean by that? That's right, voice over the internet. And that is becoming more increasingly common. So that would be another form of broadband, is the ability to communicate telecom via your computer. But again, they could raise it, they can do whatever they want, because there's no regulation over that whatsoever. And again, the question is how to fund it, how to get it to everybody's home. So again, you folks with CenturyLink, you're the ones that are paying for it. Congratulations, thank you. I don't know if anybody said that to you, but thank you. Yeah, that's what it does, Senate Bill 2, and it has passed both the House and the Senate. The questions that they're still working on are basically around the speed of internet. The House says it has to be faster. The Senate has it at pretty low standards. It's like 25 up and 3 down. It's all this complicated stuff, this verbiage they use. But it's a fancy way of saying how fast it travels, how fast you can send your emails and your Facebook post and your Twitter. I know you guys are doing a lot of that, right? Yeah. We actually encourage people to use Twitter in particular at ARP, and the reason why is because legislators are on Twitter, and that's a good way to talk to them. And if you have things you want to say, it's an easy way to do it through Twitter. And the main hashtag, I'll just say this, everybody know what I mean by hashtag, the number symbol? What you do is if you do want to say something and put it out there on Twitter, you do hashtag CoLeg, L-E-G. And it's a way to get your message out on Twitter. So I encourage it. That's just me, though. I know everybody loves it, right? No? Yes? No? Okay. You'll try it. Hey, I like that. Hey. And again, most legislators are on there, and you can follow them. All of them have like @whoever, like Jenny Arndt. I'm pretty sure she's on Twitter. Yeah. Anyway, does that explain that?
We do have a couple more things before we adjourn to lunch. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Doing all right? Thank you so much. I appreciate that. But when you all came in here, Karen, when you all came in here, we had asked to find out what was on your mind. What we have learned over these past few years of programming this event is that often some of the questions and some of the issues that you have talked about in the past didn't resonate with us in terms of questions that we could get to. So we asked you to write some of those down. And we have them here, and our Vice President, Kip Bishop, has some of those questions. And I also want you to, before we get to that, I want you to recognize Karen Brown, our new chairman of the Strategic Action Panel Group on Aging, SAPCA, right here. Our leader. Karen has been instrumental in working with the State House in terms of building a legislative caucus, which we'll talk about in a minute. Karen, can you talk a little bit about it now?
Sure.
Right.
Actually,
and then we're going to talk about a few of these questions, and then we're going to have Majority Leader Becker come down to talk to us. There might be a couple of others. Here's what happens. You got the state, the Senate, and the floor all runs out, and then everybody doesn't have time, and they come here at the last minute. Yes?
Hi. She's not going to make it.
Oh, she's not? Okay, great. Well, then we'll just, okay, we're going to migrate over to lunch a little bit earlier. That'll be good for everybody. Karen and Kit.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and start with the Legislative Caucus. It actually kind of came into existence as a result of a recommendation from the Strategic Action Planning Group on Aging. We actually created a report in 2016, a plan in 2016 in November. And within the first 3 recommendations, we really wanted to focus on really engaging government, getting them more involved, and having them look more strategically. So our number 1 recommendation was actually having a senior advisor on aging. Voila, we have Wade. Number 2 was really connecting with legislators, trying to educate and communicate, bring older people together with them, and let them understand the challenges and issues. So this year in January, we had our first Legislative Caucus on Aging meeting. We invited all legislators in, their staffers, policymakers from the different departments, and we invited seniors in. We had about 65 people, and we talked just basically about who and what SAPCA is. Our second meeting was in February. We really focused on senior housing. That was an issue that's been brought up a couple times today. We all know that affordable senior housing is a huge challenge. I know that many people might consider moving from their home if there were a more economic alternative. But we did have a good conversation there. And as it came up today, our third caucus meeting will be April 4th from 12 to 1 here in the Capitol in SCR 357. It's focusing on the Homestead Act. So for any of you who are interested, actually we'll have somebody from the JBC and somebody from Colorado Leg Services talking about exactly what does that legislation entail, what does that law actually encompass, and then we'll actually have Representative Kennedy talk a little bit about a bill that he's thinking about, he's formulating in terms of presenting. So you all are invited. We will work closely with Colorado Senior Lobby to keep those dates on the website and also at the colorado.gov/aging strategy, the SAPCA website. The thing I would also add is this summer we will actually have at least one in-depth meeting. Our co-chairs have indicated, look, during the session we've only got an hour, maybe hour and a half to pull away from the work of the legislature. But we'd really like to do some deep dives this summer, pick out a couple of issues where we spend the entire day thinking about this issue, and we start to formulate some sort of strategy or framework to really start addressing it through the legislative process. So that's basically kind of a quick and dirty on the Legislative Caucus. Steve, where to now?
Why don't you hit a couple of questions, Kit? Just to see, I can tell you all that food drives in full swing, and they can't let them go because they don't want to miss votes and they don't want to lose their momentum in terms of what each of those folks are trying to do on the Senate floor and the House floor. So that's how we're going to know whether we're going to get some people. But after lunch, then they start to come through and the floodgates open. So let's go to do you have any compelling questions? Something compelling.
The one thing that strikes me at the very beginning of this is the diversity of questions that we get. There is no real senior question necessarily. What strikes me is I have grown up in a generation where we are polite. We engage politely. We care about other people first. Then we care about ourselves. Now we're at a point where it's time for us to care about ourselves too. And it's hard to get that message out. But I'm struck by what the diversity is of our concerns. A couple of things that were touched on lightly earlier, assisted living regulation, memory care the shortage of available beds and the cost of memory care and for long-term care. I will tell you from my experience, there are a lot of people who are currently dealing with this issue in many, many organizations, trying to find a solution. We had a question earlier out of Arvada about a partnership between the private and the government sectors, and I think that really is where these solutions lie. But the truth really is that you are the solution. We don't know what that is necessarily right now, but out in that audience, out in our communities, you have the solution. And it's time we started voicing what that solution is and start that conversation. And somebody last week said to me that we're going to start having a debate that pits seniors against seniors. And that's right. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a discussion that's long overdue. We need to be having this discussion among ourselves. We have another question. By the way, is Jim Wilson in the room? Mary Ann from Salida wanted to say a lot of good things about him and the work that he's doing. I have a question here. This goes to the diversity that we're dealing with. Someone, I think it was Arnie, said, and he's from Boulder, what's the stance of Colorado on Article 5 Constitutional Convention of States? That goes way beyond medical questions, and it goes to the heart of some of our issues monetarily. But did anyone not get an opportunity to fill out a question? Out in the lobby, we have more of these sheets, and when we adjourn and go across the street, and I hope you will join us, we're going to the Masonic Temple on the southwest corner of the Capitol across the street, and we're going to have lunch, and we're going to be able to answer some of these questions, hopefully. But we'd like to really get a sense from you what is important and what you'd like to talk about. Yes, ma'am. Senior Lobby has not had that come up as a significant issue at this point. And right now, I will tell you that in a legislative session, we're pedaling as fast as we can on the issues that are in front of us with current legislation. It's not one that we've picked up as a senior issue at this time.
Thank you. So guess what? Our expected legislator was able to come and show up. So I'm going to now introduce the Majority Leader of the House of Representatives, Casey Becker.
Whatever. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I'm sorry. Hi. I'm sorry to be late. It is a very busy day today because we are trying to wrap up the budget. And the way our budget process, and by the way, I'm sorry, I'm Casey Becker. I represent House District 13. House District 13 is Western Boulder County. I live in Boulder. It also includes Gilpin, Clear Creek, Grand, and Jackson counties. So my House district goes from the Front Range to the Western Slope. It's one of the only ones that does that, and very urban and very rural. And so I have a great cross-section of issues and people in Colorado. And I serve as the House Majority Leader, which I sort of manage the calendar, manage the everything that's sort of going on the House floor, and any people that want to run late bills, they have to get the approval of the Speaker and the Majority Leader, and so people are always, you know, wanting to be my friend, because if they want to work on something, they need my assistance. But anyway, so we're trying to finalize our budget, which is the Joint Budget Committee works on the budget. There's 3 members of the House, 3 members of the Senate, and so a group of 6. They're going to try and finalize that today. We will be debating it all next week in the House. And Colorado is one of the few states that actually passes a budget every year on time and under budget. Yay for Colorado. By law, we have to pass a balanced budget every year. We can't do deficit spending, we can't do bonds, and we meet our obligation every single year. And this year, there is additional money in the budget because the past issues we've had with the Tabor cap, we dealt with in a bill last year, Senate Bill 267. And Senate Bill 267, I was the sponsor of. The Tabor cap, most people think of Tabor as having meaning that allows you to vote on every tax increase, that governments can't do it by themselves. Tabor does do that. The biggest issue we have here is that it also sets a cap. And so it means that in a lot of years, the revenue that we collect as a state, we are not allowed to keep. Because if it goes over population plus inflation, we have to give it back. And that has been a problem because there is some increase in funds, like the hospital provider fee is a fee that fit under our Tabor cap, and because there were a lot of hospital stays and a lot of money was coming in. Provider fee money we were getting, all that money is going to hospitals, and it was impacting mostly rural hospitals, but also urban hospitals. Denver Health was going to lose $30 million, and they would have had massive layoffs and program cuts. Many rural hospitals would have closed. So we fixed that issue this year. It means by moving the hospital provider fee, just doing an accounting mechanism to move it out from under the Tabor cap, we have money under the Tabor cap. We have room under the Tabor cap to allow us to keep the revenue that we're collecting this year in taxes. Am I losing everyone? It's complicated, but it's really important because this year then we actually have new money. And so there are a few things we're looking at and how to spend it. Transportation is a big priority. There's our gas tax hasn't been increased since 1992. And it's not indexed to inflation. So less and less money every year has been going into gas tax. It's not keeping up. It's a set amount, and so we have more roads, more maintenance, and less money coming in through gas tax. So we've been trying to figure out how are we going to fund transportation. The other major issue we have this year is para. Are there any para beneficiaries in here? Quite a few. So as you all probably heard, para made 2 major adjustments. One is they changed their mortality tables. Everyone's living longer. That's good news, but it's much more expensive for the state. And so they realized once they changed the mortality tables, they suddenly had $10 billion in debt that they hadn't accounted for. If you're assuming everyone lives to 75, but the average age is actually 83, and those numbers aren't exactly right, it's a lot more to the state. So in terms of para obligations. The other change they made is they said, we are assuming we're going to earn too much money in the markets. What we used to earn several years ago is not what we earn today. And so they adjusted their assumed rate of return down by a quarter point from 7.5% to 7.25%, and it added $10 billion in debt. And so they're now looking at $32 billion of unfunded liability by changing those two assumptions. And so the credit rating of the state is at risk, and the credit rating of many local school districts is at risk because of that. Some school districts have already seen their credit rating changed, which has increased their bond costs, which has meant money out of education and more payments in bonds. So that's another issue that we have to fix this year. And we're trying to figure out how to do that. How do you make up $32 billion in debt? And it will likely have an impact to seniors. It's going to have an impact to school employees, state employees. It's going to have an impact to taxpayers. It'll have an impact to employers, because we either have to increase the money coming in or decrease the money going out. It's a math problem. And so those are the affected parties. We can increase the money that employees currently are contributing or future employees are contributing. We can decrease the amount of COLA that seniors get. We can raise the retirement age. We can calculate their benefit a little differently. Those are sort of all the things that are on the table. And, but ultimately our goal is to get to full funding of para in 30 years. You pay off your mortgage in 30 years, think of it the same way. We want to make sure we have full funding for para in 30 years. So come up with $32 billion in the next 30 years. And so that's another big math problem and budget issue that we're just talking about and hope to have resolved. So it's good this year that we have some money in the budget, because we can maybe have a piece of that go to help out para, because it's seniors, it's teachers, it's a lot of state employees. About 500,000 people in Colorado are para beneficiaries in some way or another. Maybe your full retirement is based on that. Maybe you worked for the state for a few years, but 500,000 people have some planned income tied to their para benefit. So a big issue. It's great that Colorado has always been a fiscally responsible state, but so we don't have a lot of debts. So this is, we're not used to dealing with these $32 billion unfunded obligations, but I think we can get something done this year. And then another major priority, and I know Evie Hudek was just mentioning this, is funding for K-12. Funding for K-12 in Colorado, we're one of the lowest funded states in the nation. A lot of that has just been restricted by the TABOR restrictions, by the fact that we can't keep a lot of the TABOR, the tax revenue that we collect. And where you've seen the impact is K-12 education. So my caucus is really focused on having more funding for K-12. That's an investment in our state and the long-term, in our kids and our grandkids. My kids, 1st and 4th grade, want to make sure their schools stay well funded. So those are things literally today we're working on so many of these issues, because the budget is a policy document. It's how we make decisions about what we prioritize in the state of Colorado. So that's what we're working on.
Thank you so much, Representative Becker. I know this is really important, but you all know we got to vacate the room, and yet does anyone have a question?
Thank you.
Representative Becker. For those of you, we got to go, but it's important. So does anyone